So, firstly, thank you, Manu, for joining us and taking out time, of course. And it's obviously great to have, like talk to an Olympian who's sort of transitioned into this role, and that's amazing. I mean, to see sports person within the governance framework of any sporting organization, I think it's always like a pleasure. So, tell me, like you've been like a former Olympian, hockey player.
Yeah.
Uh, how do you come into RBFA? I know you were as an acting CEO as well. Now you look after the branding and marketing of the entire league. So how did that switch happen?
Yeah, well, so I always combined field hockey. I was the goalkeeper back then. Yeah, with my work because at the time it was, let's say, at best semi professional. So you couldn't just live out of hockey. Now it's a bit different because the team has grown, and I think the players now are full professionals. But back then, anyway, I always had to combine it with a job. So I started in TV production, worked for 6 years in advertising, and then I worked for one of the biggest telco companies in Belgium called Telenet, where I was responsible for the sports channels first, and then it grew into sponsorship, marketing, and the full sports strategy. And then that's when I moved to the RBFA, where everything sort of came together. So I'm currently the CMO of the federation. So I'm in the marketing department. There's not only the, let's say, the communication, all the campaigns that we run for recruitment of referees, selling tickets for games, fan experience and stuff like that. A whole content team producing a lot of content from behind the scenes from our national teams, but we also have the commercial side of things. So we have to bring in the money and then we can spend it. That's a good compromise, I think. And there's also everything related to press relations. So that's actually the role currently at the RBFA, looking after the marketing and commercial.
Recently I've been reading about RBFA, and obviously, it's really sort of, grown into this very powerful organization than when you compare it, like maybe a few years back, or, so I think there's a lot of transition which has happened, and the league has adapted very well to what's going on within the sporting ecosystem globally. So if you can tell me about, because obviously you look after this branding and comms and marketing, uh, who are your current partners right now, and and how do you narrow down on these partners?
Well, I've been for nearly for over 6 years now at the Belgian FA, and starting back in early 2019. We were at that point coming out of a very successful World Cup in Russia, where Belgium won the bronze medal. But that didn't wasn't really reflected. So the years that we grew between 2012 and 2018, there was a lot of growth, sporting growth, but that didn't really reflect in the commercial side of things. So the first thing I needed to do was start benchmarking because there wasn't a lot of information. So benchmarking with other federations, got a lot of help from UEFA. They have, let's say, a project which is called UEFA Grow, and they offer consultancy services from external consultants paid by UEFA to help grow a federation. And at that point, there was a lot of new people coming in. There was not a lot of history and knowledge of, let's say, within the federation. So we had to start from scratch, also commercially. So starting to benchmark, rapidly realizing that we were performing below par with, let's say, peer federations. So we made a new commercial plan, a completely new commercial plan, and started from scratch. And 3 years later on, we more than doubled commercial revenue. So that was a really important one. And it was driven by renewals of the current partners. That was really important, and adding a couple of partners. And the beauty of it is that of course, it's mostly the local market, and because we are a national team, so we have been partnering abroad with the partners in the Chinese market, but I was mostly around big tournaments. So, but the biggest partners of the RBFA are the local brands, and we have all the beautiful Belgian AAA brands. So we have a banking partner, which is one of the biggest banks in Belgium. They're called ING. We have Adidas as our kit partner, which is one of the most beautiful sports brands, you might say. We have Proximus, which is a telco. Jupiler, the beer in Belgium. If you come to Belgium, you need to drink Jupiler. That's the one. That's one of the ABI group, obviously. BMW as a car partner, Coca-Cola, PwC as a consulting partner, the National Lottery. So we have, let's say, 10 to 12 beautiful big brands who are supporting us. And it's been, let's say, a trajectory of a lot of growth. But now I must say that we are a bit stabilized. Let's say the market in terms of sponsorship, also in marketing, you might say, in Belgium is quite difficult at the moment. So we're happy where we are right now. We're still trying to add one or two partners in categories that are open, but it's not so easy, especially also because the sporting results have been a bit down the last 6 months to 8 months. So we need to find, let's say, a new vibe. We need to make a revival. So we have in March we have 2 games coming up of our Red Devils team against Ukraine to stay in the Nations League A group. So that's a really important one. And then from June on, we start the qualification process for the World Cup in USA, Mexico, and Canada. So that's, let's say, big 18 months ahead of us.
You've also been focusing on digitalization, so that RBFA
Yeah.
is up there against, like you said, the peer organization who've already, very, all the organizations around the world have gone very ahead, whether it's AI integration or whether we talk about, Bitcoins, etc. So, if you can tell me what was the vision behind,
Yeah.
coming up with this?
So in 2021, we started our journey by launching the RBFA app, which was an app that enabled us to start creating direct-to-consumer relationships. Because before we were really big on social media and still are, obviously, one of the biggest influencers in Belgium, you might say, on the social platforms, but that didn't bring us a lot of data. So we decided to launch a direct-to-consumer app, OTT with streaming, highlights and whatnot, but also every single amateur football player could take a look and see the schedule of his games, his statistics, the classification, stuff like that, the rankings of his team. And that was the first step in, let's say, in a new digital world. But it was only at, let's say, fixing the basics. And what we are currently looking ahead of is, the complete rebuild of our IT infrastructure and a complete rebuild of the football management system. So we have a current system that still is working, but it's a couple of years already that we're sort of looking at it like this, that we know we need to change something. But of course, it's, building something from scratch again, that's a big investment for us. But also thanks to UEFA and FIFA funding, we've decided to take on this challenge. And recently we communicated that we found a partner to do it. So we have Orion from India, if I'm not mistaken, who are going to be our partners in completely rebuilding our IT infrastructure and IT and football management system. So it's going to be a journey of probably 2.5 years with intermediate step, obviously. But let's say that the big bang, the new competition management system should be ready for the 27-28 season. So, that's a really big step for us in terms of investment, in terms of time frame that we have ahead of us. In the meantime, obviously, our RBFA app keeps running, and it enables us to, start to collect data from our fans, buying tickets, buying merchandise, from our members, who are looking at their competition, but also consuming content, watching live streams. So it helps us a lot in our data strategy. We have a gigantic data lake that we are still working on a lot, to be able to, from our marketing team, to be able to easily extract data sets to optimize our communication. So that's a big focus for us for the next, let's say, 3 to 5 years.
I understand. Also, for example, you mentioned about broadcast, etc. I know media rights in general, when you go play against other countries, so it's a bigger mandate. Maybe that's a UEFA, FIFA mandate. But talking about when we focus on nationals, how you think media rights at a national level are good enough? Or do they bring in good revenue? You know?
Let's say that we as a federation, so we have the national teams. That's us. So that's our media assets, you might say. But most of it is centralized by UEFA. So UEFA does the central sales of the national men's team. So it's a centralized sales process. It happens through UEFA, and we get a check for it, obviously, because we give our rights to them. We still do the media sales of our women's national team because that's not centralized yet. Of course, the numbers are much smaller, but as the women's team is progressing and getting bigger and bigger in terms of media attention, we're also getting some revenue from that. So that's, let's say, the two main media revenue drivers for us. So it means that we don't have a lot to sell. So most of it is done by UEFA, and just only the sales of the women's team is done. Then we have obviously have the league who sell their own rights for their competition for the first and second division, and they also do the sales of the cup. So that's with the league. So that's why how it's split. So let's say compared to 10 years ago, where the federation needed to sell friendlies or even qualification games, it's all done centrally now by UEFA.
I get, and Manu, going back to the partnership, with other sponsors, etc., having partners on board. You mentioned obviously because it's a national team, there's a sort of national pride associated with it. Therefore, you have all the top tier brands from Belgium, partnering with the association. So when you talk about categories, are the categories fixed, or you can always expand? For example, maybe RBFA can have like a Belgian ice cream partner, like our because obviously when you associate Belgium, on the touristy front, then it's about chocolates, it's Belgium waffles, etc. So similar. So are these categories open? Are these categories you look out for, or do you decide from the very beginning? All right, we're going to work only across say 12 categories, which you mentioned earlier.
No, we can expand categories because sometimes you lose some category and then you win in another category. So we let's say we have, but there's of course a limit where you cannot have 20 top partners because then the inventory that we have, the return that we can give is not so big. So most of it, most of the times when we sell a partnership, there is a sort of an exclusivity in Belgium, of course, but most of the times also in UEFA territory, which means that we can potentially duplicate our, let's say, our partnerships also to other continents, which was interesting to work with China in the last couple of years, especially leading up to the Qatar World Cup. There was a lot of interest in Chinese brands to partner with us. And it's easy for us because China has a completely, let's say, a separate ecosystem with their own social media, their own media, which is completely separate from the Instagrams, TikToks, Facebooks, so it's quite easy to make partnerships like that. And now leading up to the World Cup in USA, we're also looking for regional partnerships with US brands who have a link with Belgium or Belgian brands who are in the US. But of course, with most of the times with an exclusivity in the US. But sometimes we can also do global, of course, global deals. If it's a category that's not yet taken in Belgium, we can also look for global deals. So that's a bit what we're playing with currently.
Brilliant. And also talking about, how do you, when you approach a partner, and I'm sure, you talk to a lot of people, there might be a lot of people pitching to you, especially we've seen with the sports tech space, which is growing, the startups, they want to pilot their innovations, maybe at a match where you do only like a pilot partnership, etc. So are these areas, I would say, not categories, are these ideas sort of something which you guys really want to do as well? Because we've seen a lot of other associations, etc., they give all these pilot startup companies a chance, or they have these sports tech startup sort of a day or two in association with RBFA, and you get to choose the best tech and sort of apply during a match and give them the opportunity. Are these innovative things which RBFA is doing or maybe plans to do in future?
Yeah, that's so on the one hand, we've been looking at partnerships with more companies in tech, obviously, because there's a lot of investments from tech companies. On the other side of the spectrum, we are part of two accelerators, one international accelerator, which is called Hype. So we're partnering with startups doing proof of concepts, trying new technology. And on the other hand, we also have a Belgium ecosystem, which is called Sports Tech Belgium, where we're trying to do the same with Belgium tech companies, giving them sort of an opportunity to work with us and test new technology. And so it's let's say a win-win for both of us.
Any particular partnerships globally across sports which might have sort of surprised you, and you were like, "That's a good idea, something which can be replicated."
No,
Any
what I
part,
find well, what
any
I
part.
find interesting. Well, what I find interesting is the return of the crypto. So I thought it was gone, but it's more than ever alive and kicking. So we're also looking at that. The only problem that we have in Belgium that is that in order to partner with a crypto brand, we need to do a very thorough background check because for Belgian law, we need to. There's a law against money laundering, anti-money laundering law. And we need to do a very thorough check from where the money comes from. And when, there are some crypto brands where, the money comes from, let's say, more shabby territories, fiscal territories, so that's a difficult one for us. So we need to find brands that are more mainstream. That's why the crypto side of things is maybe more difficult for us. But that's why we're looking at more and more into sports tech, companies like Amazon. That's not really sports tech, but you know what I mean. So companies from that angle are really interesting for us. So the more tech brands or more traditional tech brands like Microsoft, Amazon, that's an interesting category that's still open for us.
What, so, apart from these, like you just mentioned, like digital and tech, what other smaller categories are open for partnerships? If any brand wants to sort of, approach RBFA, what category, according to you, would be interesting for these new sports tech companies to sort of apply or reach out to you for?
But for us, there's a couple of open categories. So there's everything that's linked to tires. That's a really classical one. Food delivery is one. Everything that's linked to pharmaceutical is also a category that's open. We have retail currently that's still open for us. So we have a couple, let's say 4 or 5 categories that we're still energy, also an important one. So let's say 4 or 5 categories where we're still actively looking to add a couple of partners. And if you find those, let's say the shop will be closed.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Manu. I think you gave me a good sort of insight into what is it that you do and what is it that the organization is doing. So I think it was a brilliant conversation. So thank you for it. What I'm going to do is I'll translate whatever you've said. I'll send across a copy to you, and then you can perhaps have a look, or maybe there's something you might want to add or delete. You can do that. All right.
Perfect. Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
great. Brilliant talking to an Olympic. I mean, I've played Asian Games, but not Olympics in tennis.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
I've
wow.
played.
Congratulations. Wow.
Yeah, 2010. So whenever I speak with a fellow athlete, so it's pretty good because you understand sort of like what it takes.
Absolutely.
So yeah,
Well
it's
done.
been. Thank you so much. I'll send across a copy to you. All right. Cheers.
Perfect.
Bye
Bye-bye.
bye.